OK， 短短的3分钟的时间啊，可能是让大家对这本书有了一个初步的观感和印象。接下来呢，我们会一步一步的更深入的了解这本图书。首先呢，我是想请这本书出版方的代表 Springer Nature 出版集团的 William 先生从新加坡给我们在线致辞，谈一谈 Springer Nature 集团为什么要出版这样一本图书。
Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Good. Greetings, everyone. My name is William Achauer. I'm editorial director for business economics and politics book publishing at Springer Nature. I'm based in Singapore and I lead a team of publishing editors across the Asia Pacific region, including China. We are thrilled to celebrate with you all today the launch of the volume Consensus or Conflict, China and Globalization in the 21st Century, which is edited by Wang Qishan and Alistair Michie. The book is part of our Springer series, China and Globalization, which has been conceived in partnership with the Center for China and Globalization, CCG. Consensus or Conflict has been published open access, which means that the complete 400-page volume and its 36 contributions, including the preface by the volume editors, is freely available to anyone across the globe with an internet connection and a keen sense in reading leading academic and professional perspectives on perhaps the most single important issue the global community faces: the sustainable future of our relationships across the world, how a long-established superpower and a quickly emerging one forge a positive relationship, cooperate with essential support across the entire developed and developing world with a common mission to take on the real threats that we as a global community face in this third decade of the 21st century. Two of the most central threats, which are covered extensively in the chapters of this edited volume, are: 1, building a truly global coalition to save the planet and to combat the menace of climate change, and 2, to develop and execute effective and smart public health measures to end the current pandemic and to prevent further ones, or at least to be able to manage further ones smartly if they do occur, so that lives and livelihoods are saved across the globe for a sustainable world economy. I'd like to express my gratitude, as well as my congratulations, to both Wang Qishan and Alistair Michie for their achievement in putting this remarkable book together. They brought together a dream team of top-notch scholars and professionals across the planet to share their knowledge and experience in this volume. Drawing upon what the volume editors refer to as the spirit and core culture of CCG, they set the scene for the book by stating, I quote, "We believe that a globalized world is the core component for the creation of a peaceful and sustainable world order that contributes to the mutual benefit of all mankind." They make a crucial point that back in the 1950s, over 90% of the global middle class resided in Europe and North America. Today, over 20% live in China. Additionally, they estimate that 1.2 billion Chinese will be in the middle class by 2027, making up 1/4 of the world total. Reflecting a bit on chapters I've read in the book, Carrie Brown, professor of Chinese Studies and director of the Lao China Institute, King's College in London, takes these issues head on in his contributed chapter. He acknowledges that China, unlike the Soviet Union, is not only a communist superpower, but also one that is, quote, "a supremely successful practitioner of capitalism," unquote. He later reminds us all that China is, quote, "multiple things: capitalist and communist, old as a culture, and new as a state. Confucian and Marxist," unquote. Both volume editors, Wang Qishan and Alistair Michie, make a central point in their chapters that China, as an ancient civilization that still exists today, can propose its own solutions to global issues, as Wang Qishan points out. Alistair Michie stresses in the section of his chapter entitled Reform and Opening Up of the World's Longest Continuous Civilization that he learned almost nothing about China at school or university, and it wasn't until 1989 when Chinese friends in Malaysia awoke his curiosity. Joseph Nye, University Distinguished Service Professor, Emeritus, and former Dean of Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, explores in his contribution, China and the US, looking forward 40 years, what the future holds now that we are in the fourth phase of the China-US relations since the end of the Second World War. Professor Nye's conclusion is that a cooperative rivalry is necessary, and neither part of that concept can be lost, ignored, or forgotten. He strikes a hopeful balance in that he writes, quote, "In my view, economic and ecological interdependence reduce the probability of a Cold War and give the two countries an incentive to cooperate and build institutions in a number of areas," unquote. There are abundant, terrific contributions in this book, and I'd love to explore them further with you, but I need to keep this speech brief and stop here. In closing, I briefly want to stress again the fact that this is an open access book. As I begin to prepare for this speech, I noticed that the book only published on our platform Springer Link just a few days ago. This was just last week. One day last week, I noticed there were 5,000 chapter downloads. The next day, it jumped up to 5,900 chapter downloads. The next day, it reached 9,000 chapter downloads, and the next day, 15,000. Then yesterday, I noticed it had reached 25,000 chapter downloads. This is what we refer to as the OA effect, the open access effect, when the discovery cycle takes on a life of its own. Oh, and by the way, today's tally is 36,000 chapter downloads. Thank you all very much for the opportunity to speak today. The release of this book is worthy of a terrific celebration.
Thank you, William. Thank you for sharing with us this surprising download data. And we wanted to give you special thanks, and especially to your team in China and for their support to CCG's publishing work. We hope to cooperate more in future with Springer Nature. Thank you.
Thank you.
谢谢 William 的发言啊，他刚才跟我们大家分享了一个惊人的数字啊。下面呢，我还想请这个 Springer Nature 中国区图书总监李岩女士给我们分享她的团队在出版这本书的时候的一些想法看法，而且呢，我相信李岩女士一定会把这个数字给我们传达的更加清晰。
尊敬的王会长、各位同行、各位朋友，大家下午好，我是施普林格自然集团中国区的图书总监李岩，非常高兴今天有这个机会，再次见到王会长和各位同仁以及各位尊贵的来宾，一起来发布我们合作的新书，合作或共识，冲突或共识，我在施普林格工作这。
In Springer, I worked for over 10 years. I witnessed China's research and development and growing influence in China and the world. In natural science, China has become the most important growing power. At the same time, for the human and impact, China has attracted more attention from the world. The reason behind is China, as a rising power, has conducted a relationship in many areas with other countries. In economy, society, culture, the publication has drawn a lot of attention from the world. In the post-pandemic time, the world is witnessing the experienced changes in 100 years. China has issued 2020, the 14th five-year plan, and the 2035 long-term vision. The poverty alleviation and the carbon nutrition, carbon climax targets has also been astonishing. President Xi in Davos Forum also released the shared future of the mankind. All countries should work together to discuss the bias of ideology to cope with the challenge in the future. The world needs more practice and the theory from China. Springer Nature China would like to work with China and China's academic community to work together to deal with the global challenge, and we will play our academic theory and methodology to sum up China's theory and practice to show China's story and the logic, theory, culture, and spirit behind it. During the publication, we are going to be open, transparent, and to abide by the ethic of the R&D and publication. CCG is one of the most important book partners in China. Over the past 2 to 3 years, we have jointly developed many book series focusing on global talent flow and China globalization. Today, the series of new books is one of our new books about China and the globalization, one of the first. The English version of China and the globalization will be published with open access. Bill, in his speech, mentioned that the so-called open access means the e-version will not be controlled by the all the interesting readers would like to download. Open access actually is one of the new way for communication. The core spirit is to break the paywall and the knowledge wall, so the knowledge can be communicated in the widest sphere to expand the cooperation and achieve a win-win. Springer Nature as one of the leading brands in open access, we appreciate CCG for their open mind for open access. I want to update the figure, the download. Today noon, when I leave from our office, I checked the chapter download has reached 39,000. I know when we talk that we should have 40,000 chapters downloads. We need to give credit to the convenience open access. I think another important reason is the content and topic of the book, as well as the interest from the global readers. I'd like to thank Mr. Wang and all the readers. I hope the books can play their role for China's global influence. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Li Yan, for the speech. I know that the book went online on the 30th of September. Within 10 days, we had 40,000 downloads, chapter download. That means 40,000 readers have access to the contents of the book. This is a very exciting figure. Why the book can attract so many readers? Topic is good, good topics are good, the writers are great. All of them are reasons. I want to invite CCG Director Dr. Wang Huiyao to release the book and to introduce the book.
Okay, thank you for giving us a very good summary at the first speech, and also Dr. Li Yan for giving a comprehensive, also most update on the latest. 那么尊敬的这个我们的
distinguished writers as well as the guests and media friends and friends online. Good afternoon. We have two writers to share with us. As I want to make a brief introduction of the book. Why did we write such a book? And what are the main contents? Who participates in producing the book? This book is one of the series of books about China and globalization. We planned the book project last year this time, and we invite the top opinion leaders and writers from the world to share with us their views about China and globalization. The name of the book is Consensus or Conflicts. What we are trying to say is that the world is facing two options, consensus and conflicts. The book, China Globalization in the 21st Century, we planned the project last year. With 1 year, with Springer Nature's support, we published the book successfully. We got almost 40,000 downloads. The idea we want to push in the book is the spirit of globalization. That means this is a time of globalization. We are faced with bottleneck. That means the global governance is lagging behind the globalization development, which needs a new consensus for governance. Another important reason for producing the book is the COVID-19. We planned the projects in the middle of last year. This is an unprecedented book. Why? Because it is a book organized by a China think tank. We invite a group of top writers, including the former Joseph Nye, the Kennedy School and the WTO Chief General Lamy and the Deputy STR, TPP Chief Negotiator. We also have important professors. Of the 38 writers, 5 from China mainland. The rest of them are around the world, from around the world. We also have the Nobel Prize winner, Edmund Phelps, as well as Singapore, the Mark Haishu, the former chief, and Jim O'Neill, the concept proposer of Golden Brick. And we also have Peter Mori, the International Red Cross. And we also have the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, as well as the former chief officers of China, Mr. He Yafei, the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. We also have the Mr. Zhu Guangyou as writer who is the former Minister of China, Ministry of Finance. We also have the Shanghai, New York University American Chancellor. So we have a very long list of writers, so I will not go into read one by one. We also have Mr. Liu Yuanli. Because of this COVID-19, we are very happy to invite Mr. Liu Yuanli to contribute a paper about global health governance. We also have the academic experts, Mr. Shi Yinghong, who present today. Thank you very much. So this, for our think tank, this is the first time. It is also very rare in China to invite so many international experts to share their views about the China and the globalization. This is a very valuable book, especially with the COVID-19, how we are going to have the consensus. And the authors are from North America, Europe, German, Britain, French, UK, Switzerland, Poland, Russia. We also have writers from the Asia, Africa, Japan, China mainland, China, Hong Kong, Singapore. We also have the formal political figures, academic figures. Our topics are 7. First, the change of the rule-based international order. The system has been established for 76 years. Do we need to update the system? How to update system? This is one of the topics. The second is public health and the humanitarian Red Cross with the COVID-19 challenge. Just now, Springer Nature, Singapore's Asian the chief director also mentioned that the global climate change and global pandemic. Another thing is how we are going to promote cultivate next generation with education, culture, and immigration management. Another thing is the trend of global governance and the revolution of digital and biosphere revolution. Another thing is the rise of the Africa and Asia and the governance from the North America perspective. Another topic is the historic lessons from the global governance. Another topic is the soft power in the governance. We have good contribution from Joseph Nye. Another benefit of the book is diversified ideas, and the recommendations are important in this book. Mr. Lamy, the former WTO secretary, he said the globalization can help improve the mankind. Globalization should serve both the traditional power and the emerging powers. Joseph Nye mentioned whether we can have a new Marshall Plan for the COVID-19, then we can have a global medical system. We also have the Nobel Economic winner, Edmund Phillips. He said that China moved during the process of from mid to high income countries. What lesson China should take? We need to continue improve our institutions. Another feature of the book is besides the 38 authors spending their efforts and resources to make constructive interpretation about globalization. We also very happy to have 12 international scholars and opinion leaders to recommend the book. All the 12 writers are from the leading experts, including the Deputy Governor of Asian Investment Bank, MD Nobel Economic winner, Oxford University China Center Director. All of them are very generous recommending the book. According to them, and we also have NCW, the semiconductor director. We also have recommendations from the UK Royal Academy. He said, if you want to understand the world fairly, this book is a must-read book. We also have the former chief director of UK Investment and Trade Program. He said, if we want to talk for the next 10 years, trade and geological competition is not enough. We need to understand China. And he also mentioned that this book is the key to understand China. There are a lot of influential articles in China, and this is the global seller writer. We also have recommendations from the Nobel Prize economists. He said, I hope the book can be successful. Hope the book can make world's view of China fairly. We also has the former Minister of Finance from the UK recommending that we need to understanding the right in China. We have different values, historical, political system, and mutual interests. And this book will be conducive to understanding the difference between the our two countries. All these important figures make good recommendations for us and suggest. For example, Oxford University professor said, this book is original, it's very wide, it's very inspiring about China's relationship with the West. This book has contributed a lot of good ideas for dealing with the relationship between China and the West. I'm not going to read all the recommendations. You can check yourself. In general, the topic is consensus or conflict. This is a question mark. I hope that with the book, we can have more consensus and minimize the conflicts. I also want to thank so many writers for writing for us. I also want to thank so many experts and panelists and senior journalists from The Economist. We also have the media friends and online friends for coming to this event. Most importantly, Springer Nature. We work with them for many years, very pleasant. This is a result of our cooperation. So that's my introduction. Thank you very much. I want to thank Dr. Wang Huiyao for your introduction. He talks about the origin of the book, the writers, and the topics it covered. So we recommend that the media friends or the guests or the viewers from the online, I hope that you can download the book because it's free. You can understand the ideas of the book. I hope that there will be global impact from the book. Now in Great Britain, another chief editor, Alistair Michie, is present online. I believe he has many ideas he wants to share with us. Mr. Wang Huiyao, he made a great efforts with us.
Alistair, it's your time.
I'm very pleased to join this book launch from Scotland. And also to welcome many friends I see there at the launch in Beijing. Thank you for supporting us. My joining is symbolic of the exceptional international spirit of our book. We have a German-British publisher, Springer. We have a British co-editor, myself, and a Chinese co-editor. The digital post-production of the book was completed by Springer in India. And as Wang Qishan has explained, the book draws together a galaxy of global leaders contributing essays. But I think our first task as co-editors, and Wang Qishan hinted at this as well, is to express our profound thanks to all those who accepted our invitation to contribute essays for this book. We're really deeply grateful that so many distinguished leaders and scholars gave so freely of their time. The generosity of our writers resulted in what I believe is a truly unique book. Never before has such an authoritative group of essayists come together to develop deep new thinking about global governance that is relevant to current shared global challenges. Another unique aspect is how our essay writers address current global challenges, such as climate change and COVID-19. Our writers hail from across the globe and share views with great authority, thanks to their wealth of professional experience. In their essays, they express deep concerns about the historically unprecedented upheavals in the world. They describe the unparalleled turbulence that mankind is facing in the form of multiple crises, any one of which has the potential to bring civilization to its knees. And the most obvious of these is the threat posed by climate change. In our book, leaders and scholars spell out why these perils pose a stark choice for the human race. They stress how any path that leads to conflict increases the risk of catastrophe. In this context, the common thread is that a consensus must be reached about the future of our world. Our writers have put forward many ideas and potential new policies reflecting their vision of what this consensus should be and how it's the only way forward for the human race. We believe that given the sentiments expressed by our essayists and the turmoil visible in the world in 2021, the publication of this book is extremely timely. Our motivation for creating the book draws on the spirit and core culture of CCG. The first element of this book springs from the concept of globalization that is embedded in the DNA of CCG. A globalized world is an essential for a peaceful and sustainable world order. And the COVID-19 pandemic has unleashed forces that pose great challenges to the realization of a peaceful and sustainable world order. But it's also a major catalyst that motivates us to collaborate and co-edit this book. Unsurprisingly, China takes a central role in many of the essays that you will read in this book. But we believe that as China now represents almost 18.5% of the world's population, this balance in the book is proportionate. In addition, China has been and continues to change at a very rapid rate, as reflected in data published in 2010 by the Brookings Institute in the United States. And I quote, "In the 1950s, over 90% of the global middle class resided in Europe and North America. Today, over 20% live in China. China is experiencing the fastest expansion of the middle class the world has ever seen. By 2027, we estimate that 1.2 billion Chinese will be in the middle class, making up 1/4 of the world total." And that's from the very authoritative Brookings Institute in the United States. Many of our writers have highlighted how China has hugely benefited from trends in globalization in recent decades. In turn, they placed a great emphasis on threats to the advance of globalization due to the challenges facing global governance. The essays contrast current global governance challenges with the last great world cataclysm. This was the upheaval caused by World War II between 1939 and 1945. That war was also the catalyst that laid the foundations for what is called a rules-based world order. Now, several of our essay writers highlight the 1944 Bretton Woods meeting that played a crucial catalytic role in creating this order or system. At the core of the order was the creation of the United Nations, the World Health Organization, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and GATT, which eventually gave birth to the World Trade Organization. Our essayists explain how the United States has led the foundation of this rules-based world order. and continues to dominate its operation. Our writers also present generous data about global governance that provokes serious reflection. For example, when the United Nations was founded in 1945, the population of the world was around 2.5 billion. By 2021, the total is over 7.8 billion. However, of all the people living in the world today, less than 4% live in the USA, while no more than 10% of the global population comes from European nations. These figures explains why so many of our authors urge that global governance needs to evolve to reflect the views of the 86% of the world's people who so far have had very limited influence on the creation of the rules in today's rules-based world order. The collaboration between Wang Qishan and myself as co-editors is built on a consensus on many topics. A primary shared belief is the immense importance of the role of think tanks, which have become even more valuable as the pace of change increases and the world has to deal with the exceptional crisis like COVID-19. Governments lack the luxury of time to think and reflect as officials deal with the daily demands in an ever fast-moving world. Think tanks like CCG provide the space for careful thought and reflection. In an ideal world, think tanks should support governments, providing a stream of ideas from multiple angles and sources that can be turned into policies to tackle challenges in governance. It's our sincere wish that some of the many ideas in the books may contribute to the genesis of new policies that deliver positive benefits to all of humanity. I said earlier that this book is unique from the range of global leaders and scholars who provided essays. The book is also unique in the 12 global leaders who've also recommended you read this book, as my co-editor Wang Qishan read and described to you a few moments ago. So please take the advice of these 12 global readers and read the book. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Alistair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your contributions. Truly unique and never before book. Thank you. Okay. 刚才我们
Just now, Alice Mitchell has made a great contribution, recommending everybody to read this never before and unique book. Now, in order to have you a great understanding of the book, I would like to leave the time to Mr. Dr. Wang to chair the workshop about the book. Thank you. And now I would like to invite our authors, writers. We are very happy to have a writer of one important essay, who is also the important expert, Mr. He Yanfei, who is the former Deputy Minister of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. 鼓掌。
来看一下，你要打开你的那个话筒。
Okay, thank you, Huiyao. Very happy to be here today. 很高兴看到王辉耀和
Today, I'm very happy to see to see Alistair and Michie and Dr. Wang Huiyao's new book, Consensus or Conflicts, China and Globalization in 21st Century. This book has invite global leaders and opinion leaders from China and abroad to do a research about China and the globe to provide recommendations. Today, we would like to talk something from the perspective of new international order from multinational level. Now we are accelerating the global change in unseen in 100 years. Power shifting towards the emerging countries represented by China. The traditional security threat and the unconventional security threat are lapping together with multi crises exploding, challenging the mankind. Technology renovation has disrupted the people's lifestyle and the production style. They are creating a new world. Globalization is challenged by populism, nationalism, ID, not politics, as well as the impact from the anti-globalization. Now we are moving into a diversified and integrated new globalization. In this time of big change, global governance and international order, new ideas and new methodologies are coming up. President Xi Jinping, in the speech in the 1st of July, he said, we need to promote peace, development, just democracy, and freedom, the common values of the mankind. He called for a real multilateralism in many occasions. These ideas are originate from China wisdom. These new ideas will be playing important leading role in the reshaping of global order. The most important global challenge is the COVID-19 pandemic, tangled with geopolitics. Its impact on global order is unprecedented. Compared with 2008 global financial crisis, this crisis is even worse. Impact by COVID-19, global economy is retreating. Global poverty population increased by 0.12 billion. It is more difficult to achieve the UN development goal by 2030. COVID-19 prevention is testing the domestic governance of a country, including the governance idea, mechanism, model. It is also an important challenge to globalism and international cooperation. COVID-19 expansion has exposed some countries, especially the US and Western countries, about the political emotion and polarization. Foreign policy is the result of the domestic policy. The resource of US domestic is because US domestic policy is kidnapped by the identity politics, populism, nationalism will of course come into the front. Reflecting on US foreign strategy over the past 10 years, US hegemony expanded, causing the great loss of hard and soft power. Finding a scapegoat and to find the enemy to transfer their crisis has become the US strategy. Anti-globalization, anti-international cooperation to embrace the unilateralism has influenced US politics, economy, and foreign policies. The uncertainty of the world has continued to rise, causing the continued chaos of international order. Big powers is competing more fierce. The rules based with the UN as the supporter and global governance, especially WTO and the special organizations, when coordinating international societies to cope with COVID-19, the action is slow and the effect is limited with great pressure. If we want to have the international consensus, overcome the conflicts like 2008, when all countries work together to deal with financial crisis. Now we need to work together to decide whether we will have a peaceful, stable, and a prosperous world, or we will have a conflicting, confronting world. Like Guterres lately said in his speech, our common agenda. All countries, are you going to choose cooperation or division? It will be a breakdown or breakthrough. And time is flying. Maybe in future, we will have no opportunities to make the choice. Big change at new time are calling that the common value of the mankind and the real multinationalism as the foundation to build the common destiny of mankind. All countries need to take enough wisdom and courage to discuss the all kinds of limitation with the ideology and the identity politics. We need to work with all the international partners to deal with all kinds of conventional and unconventional security challenge. Countries, big or small, are equal members of the international community. Big powers need to take more responsibility, helping international community to form a consensus to get rid of the unilateralism and to embrace multilateralism and the multi-mechanism. International issues we need to consult and to avoid conflict and confrontation. And we need to construct a stable, peace, and a tolerance international order. The order of the world will be complicated and sensitive. The changes and the challenges are coming. We need to be alert, not to step into the trap of geopolitical gaming. And we need to avoid all kinds of Cold War, hot war, and cold peace. We need to safeguard global economic globalization and free trade. We need to promote reform of WTO and reduce the poverty of the world, to reduce the gap between the North and the South. We need to promote the value of the mankind and be a mutual trust, mutual benefits, working together to face the challenge of the humankind. UK, UN, and the global governance is the only international order, and it is the foundation. We need to safeguard and reform. The reform of WTO may be a breakthrough and the test bed. I hope that a new WTO will be the foundation to rebuild the global free trade and investment system. And we cannot start from scratch to build a silos of trades. Of course, the most important thing now is to prevent the COVID-19 prevention. WHO need to coordinate the fair distribution of vaccines. We all need to understand that we all say we can be safe if when all of them, the countries are safe. We need to work together to build the global hygiene system. This is the urgent issue. And then
未来的全球流行疾病。
we can discover and control the future pandemics. Over the past few years, because of the anti-globalization, globalization is like a crossword. However, globalization is the trend of humankind. Currently, the governance diplomat cannot be blamed. Globalization cannot be blamed for the difficulties. History have shown that whenever there is a crisis, for example, 1840 or 1970s, globalization got challenged and reborn. Rebuild international order, we need to consider the technology renovation. The future has come according to Lao Tzu. Digital technology, digital application has bring a lot of change and impact for the society. Internet security, digital gap, big data, AI, biotechnology. The opportunities are unlimited. So is the change as well as the challenge. They are important elements influencing the reshaping of the international order. Now we are facing the historical change. International order need to be rebuilt as well. All countries need to consider their positions and directions for future growth. This book, the topic of the book is consensus or conflicts. I believe it's not optional. The answer is clear. Elites of old countries, scholars of old countries, and writers have elaborated the challenges of the mankind, stressing that all the plan for increasing the challenge will bring catastrophe for the world. The recommendation is all the countries need to build an order based on the peaceful development, justice, democracy, freedom, and common values. We need to make a consensus on all of these experts. Experts from America and other countries make recommendations and wisdom from different perspectives. They have expressed their ideal roadmap for achieving the goal. I believe that this book can help positively for reshaping the international order. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. He Yafei, for your wonderful speech. Very good introduction and of the book and very good analysis. Your idea about global governance, after organizing your ideas, we share with the rest of the audience. I want to invite another senior experts of CCG and a very international experts, the former Deputy Minister of Finance, the Counselor of State Council, Mr. Zhu Guangyao. Mr. Zhu is also one of the writers of the book. This is China release in China. We also have release in UK UK and the US. We have some experts in China. We will have the international expert writers. Now I'd like to listen to Mr. Zhu's speech. Mr. Zhu, please. Thank you, Dr. Wang. Very happy to be here to discuss the book Consensus or Conflict. For all the countries of the world to fight against COVID-19 and the series of issues caused by the pandemic. The book is very relevant. Now, the COVID-19 is still in the world, and we need to be alert that because of the COVID-19, because of the inability of the mankind to work together to overcome the virus, a series of consequences were caused. The world is paying a price. We are facing a new systematic crisis, the possibility of a new systematic crisis. Why we call it a systematic crisis? We need to pay attention to 3 areas. First is the global economy and the possible crisis. Second, climate challenge we are facing right now. We are feeling right now. Number 3, the energy crisis. Now we have seen in Europe, is now all over the world. The 3 crises are overlapping and influencing each other. The impact is more serious for global economy. International Monetary Fund lately will release the forecast for global economy. Algiva has made it clear, the president of the IMF has stated clearly that it will downplay the forecast of global economy in 2021 in July. Because of the global economy was impacted by the extreme, the quantitative easing monetary policy of some industrial countries and the big budget deficit, physical big deficit of some big powers causing the increased growth of the global commodities. Global economy in July grew out of the expectation. Because of that, IMF played the economic growth from 5.5 to 7. Now 0.2% downplay to reduce to 5.8% will be difficult to reflect the challenge caused by the inflation and the commodity price hike. Under this crisis, under this situation, the global economy was challenged in 2 parts. One risk is from the adjustment of US policy. One in November 3 and 4, Federal Reserve will declare the ending of the monthly 120 billion purchase of the bond. The market believe that the process will end in the middle of next month. next year. That means the process 120 billion US dollar bond. The process will take 8 months. Each month, Fed Reserve will downsize the purchase of the bond by 15 billion US dollars. By the end of next June, the process will conclude. At the same time, the Federal Reserve will start the process of the interest rate normalization. That means to increase the interest rate of the US. I think it will, that means a big change of the US Federal Reserve's policy not to increase the interest rate by 2020 until 2023. We need to be very alert because in 2013, the last round, the US interest rate hiking and its impact on global capital market. In the next month, in the December, 3rd of December, US that's the deadline of the debt ceiling. That means US two parties through internal gaming has reached the contemporary compromise. The postponing the ceiling of the debt to the 3rd of December. At the same time, the ceiling has increased from the 28.4 trillion US dollar to increase 480 billion 480 billion US dollars. But at that time, whether at that time the US will finish their domestic political gaming for the reputation of the US, for the global capital market, it will have important influence. Yellen of the US Ministry of Finance, Secretary of Finance said, if US cannot increase the debt ceiling and the default appears, there will be a financial crisis. This is the first risk, the US policy impact on its global economy. Another part we need to focus is the price of the oil and the impact of energy crisis. Today, US oil future has increased over 80 US dollars. Brent the crude oil future has increased over 83 US dollars. That means the highest point since 2014. Brent crude oil price 3 years, the highest point in the past 3 years. The market worries that if the price continue to grow, each barrel will increase by over 100. There will be a global economic crisis. This is a real risk. So the first issue, I want to talk about global economic crisis. We need to be very alert. Second, global climate crisis. We are feeling it in China. The world is impacted by the global climate crisis. Since the beginning of the year, the snow in Texas to the water flood in Europe, the downpour in Zhengzhou of China, in Shanxi province. Now, China is suffering the big rain downpour, global critical climate. The rising of the sea level has influenced not only the Maldives, the island country, for New York, for Shanghai, the most important business center are still under the pressure. So this is more than economic issue. It has become a national security issue. So the impact of the climate change, that means we need to have a consensus to cope with it. And to control the temperature growth within the 2 degrees. With the best is 1.5 degrees. That needs global joint efforts. So 3 key issues. First, the pricing of the carbon market. IMF released the latest figure. Currently, the carbon trade, the global average price is $3 by 2030. We need to increase the temperature growth by 2 degrees. That means the trading price should increase from $3 to $75. So how to price reasonably? That shows the economic accumulation figure, the real economic issue, and the emission per capita. So we need to have a comprehensive consideration to solve the challenge we are facing together. The second, we need to increase the green investment to expand the coverage of the green investment. The current financial crisis reminds us clearly that we need to improve the reasonable energy structure to guarantee our people, our enterprises can have enough energy. We need a complete power supply. This investment will be huge. And it will cover a large areas. From the third point, from developed to developing countries, we need to have the technology transfer. How we can optimize our energy structure, how green investment can play the role. Technology is the key. Technological transfer is necessary. It's necessary. At the same time, developed countries should meet the honor of the $100 billion climate foundation. That's critical for developing countries, and it is critical for the global efforts against the climate crisis to show the common but differentiated responsibility. Number 3, risk is that we feel first in Europe, now in the world, the energy crisis. Now, the oil price has reached the highest point in 7 years, still growing. For energy structure, it is a comprehensive. It shows conventional energy, new energy. It's a portfolio. This year in Europe, the cold weather, especially in summer, causing impact for the solar power production for Germany, and the reduced the wind influencing the windmills. Besides Europe, in Brazil, because of the drought, the hydropower was impacted negatively. That means The global energy crisis needs our attention because we are going to face a new winter. The winter is coming. The energy use, the energy consumption is increasing. Power is an important link in the game. The price of the natural gas has increased by over 100%. In Europe, the growth is over 20%, 200%. In UK, the power price has reached 300 pounds per kilowatt hour, megawatt hour. In German, it's over 200 euros for the people's life, for production. The impact is serious. I'm very unfortunate to see that the UK has to spend dozens of millions of US pounds, government pounds, to restart the production of fertilizers stopped by the high power price. It's not for the production of fertilizer, it's for the production of carbon dioxide, because carbon dioxide is important for food industry. Without the carbon dioxide, US food industry got negative impact. So not just Europe, the world. In China, a few days ago, we got the power shortage in some areas. These prices, we need to be very, we need to control with good policies. Economic crisis, climate crisis, energy crisis, overlapping with each other, plus the COVID-19. For the world, for the humankind, a big impact is looming. We hope that we can use the spirit of 2008 when we worked together against the global financial crisis. But the systematic crisis has to be dealt with systematic policy. That's why at the end of this month in Rome, the G20 summit, as well as the beginning of next month in UK, the Global Climate Change Conference will be important. For the crisis, we have to work together. And we need to have a systematic policy portfolio using multilateralism, using cooperative spirit to overcome the crisis, challenging the mankind. Thank you very much. Thank you. You mentioned some parts, the financial crisis. You talk about the climate change and the energy crisis. Very great ideas, a lot of new perspective and data. Thank you. Mr. Zhu Guangyao used to be working in Washington. Now I would like to invite a writer present today. Mr. Liu Yuanli. Liu Yuanli is my friend. We used to, when we were in Harvard University, you are experts in the public, you organized the China-US Health Forum. Now you are working as the the Dean at Peking Union Medical College School of Health Policy and Management. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Liu, 5 to 8 minutes per person.
Has been playing a very important role in fostering dialogues among the international opinion leaders and movers and shakers. And this book launch is yet another one of the many successes achieved so far. So I salute you and your team first. Now, needless to say, how honored and delighted I am to be part of this book project. As Huiyao alerted to earlier, this book project is inspired in large part by the global public health crisis we are experiencing, namely the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, as some of you may know, Chinese word for the crisis is actually consisting of two characters, danger and opportunity. So as a public health scholar, I hope that the world can learn from the current crisis 3 major lessons. The first lesson is obvious, and it's bad news. We as a human species is very vulnerable, and oftentimes we lose sight of that fact, especially after having successfully dealt with Zika, Ebola, SARS. We thought no big deal. Novel infectious diseases can be controlled, can be detected easily. But, little of us has expected, even in our wildest dreams, that's the current COVID-19 little virus would have infected more than 200 million people worldwide with a death toll of over 4 million. Okay. In addition to the disruption and setback of socioeconomic development we heard already from other speakers. So we should constantly on guard, and pay keen attention to our global security threat posed by another species, not human threat. It's by another biosecurity. Now, the second lesson is a good news. In spite of these tremendous challenges, we also realize we as human beings, very powerful. We are powerful. And the globalization itself is accelerated by, the technology advances, transportation means, information. Yeah, so the exchange and flow of information, goods, and people, is underlying part of this globalization, which brought prosperity. Of course, also new risks, for any novel virus to spread quickly around the world. But we are powerful because we have ever expanding toolbox. For example, it took China more than 2 months to be able to identify the underlying pathogen of SARS. Last time when the novel infectious disease occurred in China. But this time around, because of the advances of biological sciences, especially genetics, the Chinese scientists were able to, complete gene sequencing within just 2 weeks and shared with the world instantly so that other countries can develop vaccines and drugs accordingly. And yes, the world developed vaccines in record speed. We are powerful also because we realize even in the absence of the vaccines and drugs, traditional public health measures like isolation, social distancing, if we can get our acts together, really worked, because China, for the first time in the anti-epidemics history of human being, we decided to lock down a city with more than 11 million residents. That's my hometown. I originally planned to bring my son to go back to Wuhan to spend the Chinese New Year with my aging mother. And at that time, I even questioned the necessity of make such a huge decision. But it turned out to be one of the most visionary and decisive decisions. So we can control the disease if we get our acts together. But the last but not the least lesson is less obvious. We are vulnerable in large part because we are powerful. Even though China showed the way, the best practice, unfortunately, in addition to the natural viruses, during the process of global pandemic, we also suffered social viruses of misinformation, scapegoating, dirty politics, and so on and so forth. More importantly, we should realize that the evolution of Earth is divided by geologists according to the marked shifts in the state of the planet. Recent global environmental changes, which may, underline the fact that we experience the occurrence of novel infectious diseases at an increasing frequency in recent decades. So this suggests that Earth may have entered a new human-dominated geological epoch known as the Anthropocene epoch. So in conclusion, I'd like to suggest that adopting the Anthropocene perspective may help break the pernicious cycle that asserts that humans are just passive observers of the Earth's functioning. In his famous book, Social Conquest of the Earth, E.O. Wilson suggested that the major factor affecting species such as ants and human beings to survive and thrive lies in their fundamental capability to work together. So to a large extent, the future of the only place where life is known to exist is being determined by the actions of humans. Global public health security depends on well-coordinated global actions. Divided, we are vulnerable. United, we are powerful and hopeful. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Yuan Li, and for your excellent remarks. And then you are really the person that actually in this crisis of a pandemic, and you have made a lot of good recommendations. And I'm very thankful for your contributing to the book. Also, thank you as a colleague at the State Counselor's Office.
He's also the counselor of the State Council. Now I would like to invite the Renmin University School of International Relationship, Doctor of Academic Committee, Shi Yinghong. We would like to hear your voice. Thank you, Mr. Huiyao. Thank you for inviting me, for sharing with you some of my ideas. First, I would like to congratulate for the book. I want to thank all the speakers because of I am majored in international relationships, so I want to talk about my major, the changing dialogue attitudes between US and China after Biden administration ran away from Afghan. What is to stop the high attention? That means compare with the top 8 months, mainly stop the escalation of the tension between US and China. But at the same time, in future, Biden administration will not downplay the tension between US and China. Of course, the change of the attention, to stop the acceleration, there's 3 reasons. First, US administration and senior officials after July 27 by now haven't criticized China for the so-called crime in Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Second, US information system about the origin of the pandemic, the 19 days report reaching in conclusion. Number 3, Biden president during the UN speech haven't criticized China since the Press Secretary Psaki, the connotation, the speech per se, retreat a little bit. Psaki said the president in the UK will speak a lot against China, but as a cycle, the 30-minute speech, the Biden's UN speech, Biden said. So he said against the powers dominate the small powers, be it military or economic or technology of information. Biden calls all countries to criticize the crackdown on the ethnic minorities, and so Biden said they will pursue a new WTO trade, World Trade rules, so all the countries can compete fairly. But in general, I know no escalation of tension from the US. Why? 3 reasons. First, Joe Biden need to deal with the domestic military setback, plus the alliance diplomacy because of the Delta virus in US and retreating from Afghanistan. US resources, the trillions of the US has become important priority for domestic legislation. Number 3, continue to worry about the China-US military conflict, especially for Taiwan and the South China Sea at the same time. August means the military direction has been focusing on India, Pacific, and China. EU has become more clear. EU clears that in the US strategy for Washington, D.C., the EU is the second or the third group of teams. So the Washington, D.C., we will not sacrifice the demands of the first tier, like including Australia. The US, the French got angry with the US and Australia. That means the US will increase presence in the India-Pacific region. Huawei, released the Huawei the CFO. Let's not overlook the Secretary of the White House said in the 27th of September.他在27号说
policy has not changed. Our policy for China, it's a ratio of competition. We are going to continue to hold the PRC to account for its unfair economic practices, its cursive actions around the world, and its human rights abuses. And we will continue to do that in partnership with our allies around the world. So there's absolutely zero impact of this events. No one should read it as an impact on our substantive policy. Self-evident as these words. 主要为了我感觉到中国现在有些少。
Some of the Chinese are over optimistic. When the US president makes a smile, then Chinese people feel very happy. Let's not do that. The trade policy. About Biden administration's attitude towards China. Now let's talk about the upcoming US trade policy. In the 4th of October, President Dai, US trade officer in the Washington International Relationship Center, they make concurrent for reviewing US-China trade. Besides buying the US agricultural produce, China has not finished by 2011 the commitment in the US-China trade deal. 22 years increase by purchase of 200 billion US dollar products. Trump's the trade war impact the US consumers' interests. Number 3, China will not do meaningful market reform. China will continue to have the market, the command and not market trade, which is unfair. And he declared that Biden administration will take the following countermeasures. First, in the future, she will talk with China about unfinished purchase commitment without increasing the tariff for punishment. We are not ruling out the increase of tariff, and he will start a reduce the tariff reduction and to take the application of the tariff redemption. We will not take the second trade negotiation and to safeguard our economic interests. In her words, to take all the necessary measures to protect their own Biden administration will make to push forward the legislation for domestic investment of $1 trillion US. US plus alliance will deal with China's unfair trade from the position of strength to deal with China. Therefore, the conclusion is China government, if take the similar actions and to deal China-US trade war may downsize, but will continue to a certain extent and maybe through the US policy, and we will have new battlefield against China. in the area of trade war. In the end, I want to say that the core demand of US are four. US policies, especially from the Trump and Biden, from their words and the action, they will try their best to expand their China's military presence from China mainland to 12 miles of the surrounding sea. Second, to prevent China to have the deep ocean, the marine and the military presence. Number three, deny China's pursuit of the senior technology plus US dependence on the China trade, then the US may have the economic sanction against China. Biden will deny China's the impact of the world compared with the West to prove that the so-called dictatorship called by US will be compared with the democracy.
Among others, do that conflict has already been going too long. The last significant consensus is and will be difficult to be built. Thank you.
好的，好，谢谢，谢谢。
Thank you, Professor Shi. Consensus of conflicts, China-U.S. relationship is an important part. Like what you said has made a good analysis about China and the U.S. Very good for the. Thank you very much. 现在呢，时间不多了。
Guests also participating as well, and so maybe we have 3 minutes of each, and maybe we start with Pierre Caribou. You are the special envoy of the International Red Cross Committee in China, and so maybe give your 3-minute remarks on that, and we'd like to hear from you.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here, first of all, and an honor, and thank you for having the International Committee of the Red Cross as being part of this discussion based on the contribution by President Peter Maurer to this important book, for which I also want to extend congratulations. The title of the book is Consensus or Conflict. So as far as the International Committee of the Red Cross is concerned, we were born on the battlefield over 158 years ago. That is the very nature of our organization, is to work in conflict zones. And we have done so in a whole range of conflicts from World War I to World War II, the wars of national liberation. We've done so in the conflicts currently of Afghanistan, Syria, Somalia, and elsewhere. Working in those environments is something incredibly demanding in our pursuit to preserve human dignity and lives in the middle of those incredibly dramatic circumstances. And if you look at some of the key components, key features of conflicts of today, one of the striking features is their long duration. Israel and Palestine, 70 years, Afghanistan, 40 years, Yemen, 35, and you can continue, there's a long list. And we think, if you add to that issues like the urbanization of conflicts, the fragmentation, the multiplicity of armed groups that you find in these, this is very characteristic of the challenges that we face in many of those circumstances. Now, we are about responding to needs in war, and that requires dialogue. And here we're already taking one step in the direction of the other part of the title, which is consensus. We need dialogue in conflict zones, and the ICRC does that, meeting and talking to all of the parties to try and influence change of behavior. As difficult as that might sound, it is actually one of our responsibilities to sit down with armed groups, report to them about their behaviors, and try and influence change. But I think the most important element in terms of consensus that is needed about armed conflicts is to actually do something about their very existence and their long duration. Because we can provide humanitarian aid in conflict zones for decades, and I've just given several examples. But populations in those conflict environments require more. It is not only about saving lives. It is actually about noticing one of the critical deficits that exists currently in the international system, and that is to prevent or resolve armed conflicts. And there is a deficit that is so critical. If you look at the performance from everything from international institutions, the Security Council and others, there really has not been a pattern of successful conflict resolution in recent decades. And when I was listening to Professor Liu about how to deal with a global health crisis, you said, we're both vulnerable and strong, and in our strength lies our vulnerability. That applies very much to how human beings deal with armed conflict. At least in a health crisis like COVID or in climate, we may not yet have a full consensus internationally about how to act, but the necessity to act, I think, is clear to almost everybody. About armed conflicts, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you, we have not even reached that stage. It is as if the vulnerability of human beings when it comes to armed conflict lies in the fact that we consider armed conflicts and violence as an inevitable part of human existence. It just happens. And when you consider something as inevitable, you don't deal with it. You don't address its root causes. You don't create consensus and a commonality of purpose and action. And here is where we need new ideas. And the ICRC is also delighted to have a very dynamic and engaging dialogue here in China on COVID, but also on conflict, because China speaks about peace, development, stability. And right now in Afghanistan, that is very much needed, for example, where we have our teams. And therefore, this form of dialogue, in addition to the conversations on Belt and Road initiatives and how to add a humanitarian dimension to it, is very much at the heart of our current thinking and dialogue with China. And I will end, Mr. President, with simply a very humble comment, which is, I think it is precisely because the ICRC teams on different parts of our planet are every single day confronted with the human consequences, terrifying human consequences of armed conflict, that we feel legitimized, even responsible, to call for more dialogue, for more consensus building, and for action in resolving many of the world's conflicts. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you, Pierre. You talk very well. I think that is exactly related with ICRC, and but also the theme of the book, conflict and consensus. Thank you for your contribution. I'd like to have David Blair, is also a CCG senior economist and the former chair of the economic department of Eisenhower Institute in Washington, DC. So maybe we'll have a few minutes, and David is also one of the authors of the book. Briefly, David, please.
I'm going to try to sum up the drivers of the future of U.S. foreign policy. I think what CCG is doing here is extremely important. So, you've been for people in difficult or any of this with similar people working in this relationship between China has gotten progressive. Public view has become I think it's I agree with 2050 and 2060, where we have a cooperative competition between major centers of the world and also smaller countries. It's a very nice world, but I don't live in Vietnam unless there's some sort of miracle. I think next decade, there are many new we need to understand each other better. avoid. One risk is the United States has a very hard time adjusting new foreign policy to grow behavior and other things. U.S. foreign policy that not it doesn't have a doctrine to deal with it. Very hard to do. We talk about international world order. Those are all sort of beautiful things. We shouldn't forget that another large part of that world order was the Cold War, NATO, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. This is about everything. And President Eisenhower pointed out the creation of a very powerful national security and intelligence establishment. So very powerful. I'm not saying that. Not trying to do the probability that it happens is not zero. We need to understand each other, we need to understand that the smoke is much better in order to avoid. We're facing a very difficult test. So, first of all, I think China. China is likely to continue growing. So GDP is going to be completely equal. That's going to set out the world forward. Also, there's lots of political and financial risks out there. We are seeing the most loose and I think irresponsible monetary and fiscal policy in the United States and also that we've seen I grew up and sort of came of age in 1970, which saw very loose fiscal policy created inflation, which led to all over fixing the problem of the early 1980s. We thought that would never happen. Now, it can happen for the last 20 years. Growing some addicted to very loose monetary policy, very low interest rates. Getting out of that well, as I'm saying, it takes a lot of risk. I think this idea of having more dialogue is really an important way of trying to minimize.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Blair, and for your great remarks. Exactly, we're trying to build a bridge, trying to avoid this misunderstanding, so enhance the mutual understanding. Now, I'd like to have a friend of CCG and Warren Armstrong and Chairman and CEO Armstrong Music and Arts. So maybe 3 minutes of your brief time if you have.
Thank you very much. Well, I wasn't expecting to say hello today, but I'm very honored to do so. Actually, my company specializes in culture projects, mainly bringing them into China. But in recent years, especially with the statement of President Xi that the best of China needs to go out to the world, we have a new theme of, we call it empowering culture. And I know that my friend Alistair Michie up front really believes strongly in the possibilities of soft power. I should say that actually one of the countries that needs more action on the soft power front is the US sending its artists or its orchestras or dance or whatever to China. And we're trying to do that in the next few years. We actually did have a wonderful project for the Dream of the Red Chamber, Hong Lo Meng, which was produced by the San Francisco Opera. We brought it to China, and it was the first event that the then new ambassador from the US attended. group, Poly Group, which is our partner in this project, was absolutely astounded that some 16 ambassadors came to the opening night of the project. And we were really thrilled to see that happen. But I think, of course, COVID has pretty much shut us down at the present time. We've been doing a lot more Chinese projects, but at the same time, it's enabled us to dig in, if you will, to what's really happening inside China and seeing what can be the best projects that we can take out of China in the future. So for me personally and for my company, it's a very exciting time looking to the future, hopefully by the middle of 2022, when projects can start traveling in both directions, and to find a way that culture can help enhance this dialogue that everyone's talking about. Maybe they can do it at concerts before and after concerts and performances, rather than always just in a rather more formal boardroom setting. I look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Warren. Yeah, we need music. We need cultural exchanges. That is also a part of the theme. Now I'd like to have another honor guest, William Lindsay. He's the founder and the director, International Friends of the Great Wall. So you've been in China and you know China quite well. So what's your impression today, please?
Well, first of all, hearty congratulations to yourself and Alistair, Michie, an old friend of mine. We met about 20 years ago. Alistair had come over to make a documentary film about the history of Chinese civilization, and it was a real eye-opener for him. He included the Great Wall in that documentary, and we visited the wall many times together. And I particularly remember one occasion witnessing the sunrise at a high tower. And I quoted one of my favorite quotes by a professor who was in China about 100 years ago at the so-called Yanqing University, that became Beida many years later. There's no better place to talk about the past, the present, and the future of China than the summit of the Great Wall. And in my 30 years here, I've seen the future of China happen in my very eyes. And I've realized myself that the key to understanding China and accepting China and trusting China and admiring China is an appreciation of her history. My new friend, David Blair, who I only met for the first time today, explained how difficult it's going to be for the United States to accept the growth of China. And the only suggestion I can make is people like myself, people like Alistair, writing about China's history, make China's history known to the world, a world that's increasingly reading the top lines of social media, which can be extremely misleading. Alistair, good to see you there in Pittenweem, Fife. I had a dram the other night and thought of you. You also mentioned China's civilization. I think this is another thing people have to understand more. China is the only continuous civilization in the world today. It's not a Johnny-come-lately that started to make plastic buckets, nuts and screws and electronics in the last couple of decades. They were set back in the last century, but they've overcome many challenges. They're just getting back to where they've been for most of human history. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Thank you for your nice comments. And always good to hear people here in China from China experience. Now I'd like to invite Ted Falk. He's the senior correspondent from Economist, where it's a very influential magazine. I'm glad that you can make, and we'd like to hear from you as well.
Thanks very much, Henry. It's Plafker, and in Chinese I'm just named Li. That makes it easier. I'm among the 40,000 people who have downloaded the book so far, but I haven't gotten very far. I look forward to doing it. The discussion here today, I think, really highlights the importance. I just can't imagine a more central question. I've been here also 30 plus years as an American working for British media, reporting on and just paying close attention to the US-Chinese relationship. It's been up, it's been down. The internal politics here have been up and down. I wish I could say I was more optimistic, but I find there's a lot of polarization within my own country, and I find it being mirrored in the US-China relationship. And I think COVID has made it worse. It just came at a bad time. All of the kinds of dialogue that are so important, ranging from music to top level leaders on both sides, just getting to see each other, and mid-ranking leaders and mid-ranking functionaries, people in the bureaucracy at every level, just coming and going and getting to know each other and see each other as humans and talk to each other about issues is so important. And now it's not happening. So I'm concerned, and because of that concern, I'm grateful for the work that went into a book like this. I look forward to reading it. I think it asks the right question and comes at the right time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ted. It's important for journalists to take a look at this as well. And thank you for coming.
Now I would like to invite a business group, Wang Qishan, who is work in both China and UK. So what is your view? Thank you. Ms. Dr. Wang, first, I would like to congratulate CCG and Dr. Wang and Alistair. This is a milestone book. I'm very happy to read part of the contents before the publication, prefaced by Alex and his chapter. I got astonished. I believe that it has great current significance, but it stands on the very high position of the time to talk about the consensus. Just now, Mr. Wang want me to talk from the business perspective. I believe that consensus or conflict is not optional. The consensus is we need to expand the consensus and control the conflicts, but communication is not enough. We need the market players, companies, business entrepreneurs to do more invest and trade to expand the cooperation. Currently, especially China, US, China, UK, China, Japan, and China and the West, the direct cooperation is challenged. I believe third-party cooperation may bring us a direction for expand our interest. For example, China, US business can work together in Middle East, in Africa. China, Japan companies may work together in South Africa, the less sensitive areas, to do the three-party cooperation. Through this practice, we can expand our benefits. Through the cooperation, we can expand consensus to reduce the conflicts my company have. Like Dr. Wang said, in China and the UK, we have many cooperation projects. Now we work in third parties as well. In Middle East, in Africa, when we have some resources and the network in Europe, in Great Britain, we use China's strength to work with UK in the Middle East. So this is my thank you, Mr. Wang. I want to invite two speakers to say. One is Zoom Harmet.
doctoral fellow at Tsinghua University, but also a research fellow at Center for China and Globalization. So maybe you can share from your point of view as well.
Thank you, Dr. Wang. Firstly, I think it's really an honor for me to be here among speakers, participants on this panel who have a ton of experience in different fields and that are really contributing to the idea of consensus or conflict. So I want to congratulate CCG, Dr. Wang, Alistair, for completing a project that is getting the deserved recognition as well. We see these downloads because this is what people want to hear. They want to know how is consensus and cooperation possible. So I'll try to take some points from my own experience and also a few ideas that speakers today have mentioned. First of all, Pierre from Red Cross, how to pronounce your name? Pierre, okay. So you talked about conflict, and I don't want to start off morbid, but I do come from a country and from a generation where we were immensely, deeply impacted by conflict in Afghanistan. I'm from Pakistan. So I saw that phase when really in our universities, there were snipers being installed on the walls. It affected our psyche a lot. And actually what conflict does to people is it makes them adapt, especially those in the hotbed, in the centers of those conflict zones. It makes them adapt to a new normal. It makes them become more daring. It results in an impact that can be profound and negative. So we really have to work towards a way to avoid conflict, avoid things reaching that point where young people we have economic refugees. There's so many issues that spill over. And over time, we've realized that conflict in one part of the world, in the periphery or marginalized, will not stay there. It will come back to the center. It will come back to others. There is an organic link between those that are suffering and those that think they're supposedly safe. So even if not for the sake of humanity, not for the sake of goodwill, even for pragmatic reasons, we as the global community have to realize that cooperation is the only way forward. Like Mr. Wang, you just mentioned, consensus is not enough. It is the first step. It is the most important step. And I think the one thing that COVID-19 as a reality, as a bitter truth made us realize is that borders or wealth or things that we supposedly feel make us safer do not, unless humanity, unless poor countries, unless poor communities are able to overcome this issue, we are all not better off. We are relatively worse off. So we need to cooperate. And this applies to many other aspects, many other global issues. So I'm borrowing this from someone else, but someone said that we have global challenges, national governments and private corporations. How do we reach a space where we are able to work together more effectively? I think one of the solutions is this book, having people, like-minded people who understand that this is pragmatic, this is necessary, come together, advise governments. This is the role and the responsibility of think tanks. And I'm immensely proud to be affiliated with CCG that is spearheading this process. And secondly, I think we just need to find better ways to understand the direct impact that inequality or other issues are having. And I think this is why I'm someone who is studying international relations, but also the Belt and Road Initiative for this reason, that it is a way to avoid conflict. It is a way to address security threats or challenges or inequality through an economic and holistic approach. So let's think of ways, China's history, 5,000 years of history, is one way to study how humanity can overcome challenges. We need to broaden international relations theory as well to incorporate global experiences, historical experiences. And I'll end it at that. Thank you and congratulations, really.
Thank you, Zoom, and for your comment. But I think we are running out of time. But I'd like to have a last speaker is the Zhang Yinyin. She's also the editor for the.
He's also the editor of the book. Thank you. I haven't prepared, so I learned a lot from today. Mr. Wang and the CCG, we had a very good cooperation, and we are very happy to see the first book of the new series. After several days, we got so many open access downloads. as the publishers, our attention is very simple. Through this project, we can realize our goal as a platform for publication and communication, so the book can play its role. So much for me. Thank you. Thank you very much. Because of the time issues, we had a very good discussion. I have so many media friends, they haven't been able to ask questions. We can talk offline. We will have book launch in UK, in US. So this is the only book launch in China. It's a very good book. We have so many experts on and offline. Thank you, William. Also, in Singapore, he's present from the beginning to the end. Thank you very much. Mr. Zhang, Mr. Li, I also want to thank all the experts present today. I know that Liu Hong, CCG Director, who has time to say, if you have any question, you can talk to her after the meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you.